I often get the question, how do I know I'm releasing correctly? Because some people, they just don't feel that tightness or contraction, usually in the stomach or chest, where it's a physical feeling of pushing down the feelings that we can identify and then just open up and release that unwanted energy. Now, some of us, we could feel that contraction, but oftentimes we feel stuck, like it's just not moving. Nothing is happening. So how do I know, or how do I get to the place where I can be sure I'm releasing correctly? So what I'm going to do in this video is take you through the experience of releasing step by step so that no matter who you are, you can absolutely release. I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm going to show you how to make sure that you're releasing the right way, the way that Lester intends. Check this out. Welcome to the Power of Quiet, the simple way to self-realization. So if you want total control over your mind and more happiness and abundance in your life, then you've come to the right place. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. You're going to love what we show you, because what we show you is purely experiential, which means you get to experience it firsthand, and it's going to knock your socks off. Now, if you're a regular here, and you already love that the work that we do, it brings gains to you in your life, then let us know. Hit the like button below, drop a comment, share your gains, ask any questions, all that good stuff down below. Now let's just jump into it, because this is going to be an in-depth one. Now I often get the question, how do I know if I'm releasing correctly? And this can come from someone who doesn't feel the contraction that we often talk about and identify, where it's a physical manifestation of us pushing down our feelings, right? Like pushing down our fear. Oh, I don't want this fear right now. I just need to get it out of the way. When we push our feelings down, we feel that pressure and tension in our body that we can open up and release. So some people don't feel that, right? And I'm going to show you how to get around that and eventually start to feel that. Now, some people, while they may feel a contraction, oftentimes they're just stuck with it, right? I'm trying to open up, I'm trying to release, but nothing seems to move, right? I'm going to show you how to deal with that. And sometimes we feel, okay, I could feel like I'm releasing, but I don't know if I'm doing it enough. Especially because even though I feel a little bit lighter, I'm not really getting any gains. I'm not getting any visceral feedback from the world about my releasing, right? And one of the things that we can identify that we're releasing correctly is the world changes. Because it's through the experience of releasing that we discover firsthand that everything out there is our own picture. And by releasing, we could change our picture and see an immediate change in the world. This is how we can achieve our goals. So I'm going to show you how to really get on track with that, so you can know for sure that you're releasing, you're making strides, big strides, towards your goals and getting really what you want from your releasing. All right? Now, before we get into all of that, I need to make a confession first. The releasing that I typically show on this channel, 95% of the releasing that I show on this channel isn't even Lester's method. This is not what Lester intends for us to use as releasing, right? This is something different. In fact, a lot of the other ways that you've heard, that are alternatives, other ways to release. Like you may have heard about the kinesthetic way to release, right? That's typically what we do here on this channel. Or you might have heard about the holistic way to release, or the Lesterizing method, or the fifth way to release, and on and on and on, all these different ways to release. Those are not the method. None of them are. In fact, a lot of these other ways to release is really someone's ego basically saying that Lester, the master, his method isn't good enough. It's too complicated. It's too hard. I know a better way. Let me show you a better way to release, or another way to release. And it's kind of like how in most religions, the origin is something that's just pure and powerful. But throughout the centuries following the original teachings, all other sorts of interpretations and layers get added onto it, where after a while, the practice of that religion is a very superficial representation of what that originally was. So that's why, even though I show a way that's not necessarily Lester's method, one of my main purposes in sharing Lester's method is to keep it pure, keep it original, keep it the way that Lester intended. So I want to make some clarifications about what it is that we do here and all these other ways to release, and what Lester really intends for us to use as the method. Now, the releasing we're going to focus on here is the releasing that we typically do on this channel, which is what we call the kinesthetic way of releasing. And this way was developed by my teacher, Larry Crane, who was a student of Lester's. And Larry came up with this kinesthetic way of releasing, just as a light way of releasing. And he taught it, but he was very clear that this kinesthetic method is not the way that Lester shows us how to release. It's something different, and it should not be used as a substitute for Lester's method, right? It has its place, but it is not the method. Larry was very clear about that. Now, there are some good things about the kinesthetic method. That's why we do it here on this channel. And there are some limitations to that, so I'm going to go over those real quick. Now, one of the good things about this kinesthetic method of releasing is that it's a good introduction that you can release. Because before we learn how to release, most of us, we spend our entire lives doing everything but. Because there's basically 4 ways that we can handle our feelings. We can suppress them, like the feelings that we don't like, the anger, the regret, the guilt, the fear, right? Those negative feelings that are uncomfortable, like, I don't want that here. What do? We try to push them away or push them down. Get out of here. I don't want you. But we push them down into our own subconscious and we hold on to them. And that's where they fester and grow as we grow. And the second way we handle our feelings is we run away from them. We do anything we can to escape them, whether that's distracting ourselves, with our smartphones, or get on the computer, or socializing, or shoving food in our mouth, or smoking a cigarette, anything to distract ourselves, to occupy ourselves so we can avoid our feelings. And we do all sorts of things in order to avoid our feelings. We change relationships, we change jobs, we change cities, hoping that if we go someplace else, that'll take care of our problems and our negative feelings. And the third way that we handle our feelings is we express them. We scream, we yell, which sometimes might feel like a bit of a release in itself to express ourselves. But the problem is, when we express ourselves, it's just like a pressure cooker that has a valve that lets out the excessive gas. But once that pressure gets back down to a certain level, the valve closes again, and then it starts building pressure again. So what happens is, say we have anger issues, right? So we fly off the handle, we scream, we yell, we have a big temper tantrum. But then after that, we feel bad. We feel guilty. We feel embarrassed. And what do? We go right back to suppressing our feelings. So that's typically what we do. This is what most of the planet does with our feelings. Either suppressing them, escaping them, or expressing them. So often we come to this method not even knowing that we can release, not even realizing that there's a way. And we don't really understand what these feelings are all about. We just kind of come to accept that, well, anger is sort of a normal thing. It's natural. And it has its proper place. We should have anger. When the truth is, the anger is just an illusion. And it is 100% unnecessary. And all of these feelings that we experience, that we give some sort of value to, have no meaning whatsoever. Not compared to the ultimate truth. So all these feelings are just an illusion. And most of us don't even understand that. So that's the first benefit of just experiencing how we can just kinesthetically let it go, so we can realize, oh, this anger that I've been fighting with my whole life, I don't have to wrestle with it anymore. Actually, I could just open up and let it go. I didn't realize I could do that, right? So that's a great benefit for why we demonstrate this, because it just gives that experience of, oh, I can let go. This is possible, right? It's like a gateway drug, into the greater depth of what the method is all about, right? It just kind of hooks you in so you can learn more. Now, the other good thing about practicing this kinesthetic method is that it's something that you could use in the moment. And it's very easy to use. Once you practice it, it's something you could use right on the spot. So when you're out in the real world, you're not just kind of hanging out, in the ashram, nice and quiet, where everything's peaceful, right? No one's there to interrupt your positive vibes. When you're out in the hostile world and you got someone in your face really giving you a hard time, screaming at you, and you feel that feeling in that moment, you could use this right away. And the other person, they don't even need to know what you're doing. But you could just open up right there in the moment, start letting go, and you could see a change right there unfold right in front of your eyes. So it's good for that. And likewise, this kinesthetic way of releasing is good for when you feel overwhelmed. Because no matter how good of a releaser you are, along the way, you're going to get some pretty heavy feelings coming up. And that's what they're supposed to do. But sometimes these feelings can seem bigger than you, right? You can hit a big chunk of anger that just seems to take control over you. Or you might bring up some grief that just blindsides you. And in those situations, it might be very difficult to wrap your mind around using Lester's method, going through the 6 steps. So in those moments, it's like all you could do is just open up and let that energy go right there on the spot. And you could just start letting it go until you feel light enough. Then you can start digging deeper. And that brings us now to the limitations of this kinesthetic way of releasing. And the first limitation of it is that it just releases the surface level feelings, right? When you feel the contraction in your stomach or chest area that I'm going to show you. And for those of you who are subscribers, you know what I'm talking about. That's really just kind of skimming the surface. And here's the thing. You can release a feeling wonderfully just by opening up, letting that energy go. But you've got lots of other feelings. And you've had feelings that have been building up in you. your whole life. Think about all the feelings just through your adolescent years. Not to mention later on, through your adult life and going through a midlife crisis and all sorts of challenges and tragedies and all that. And if you consider that maybe you weren't just around this lifetime, but many, many other lifetimes, that's a whole bunch of feelings. And if you had to release each feeling one at a time, like we do when we open up that door, it'll take a pretty long time to clear out the whole thing, right? So, Lester's way is a method that digs deep. In fact, it's designed to go right to the very root of where all these feelings are coming from and pluck them out right at the root. So, it is basically 100 times as effective as if you're releasing just one contraction at a time. Now, because this kinesthetic method just skims the surface, the ego loves that. Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That ego is not interested in your freedom. It does not want you to be free. Because in order for you to go free, you're going to have to drop that ego. You're actually going to have to dissolve the whole thing. And so that ego's own survival mechanism, it's only interested in itself, and it's only interested in keeping you a slave. It wants to boss you around. It does not want you to let it go. So remember how I said there are 4 ways to handle a feeling. And one of those ways is escaping, right? Escaping, running away from the whole thing, right? I'm not even going to go there. That's why the ego would love for you to do a lesser method. This is also why I've seen a lot of graduates who have learned the method, have learned to use Lester's 6 steps and have done it very well. At some point, they bounce. They go off and decide, oh, you know what? I'm going to do Tony Robbins now. I'm going to do something else. So I heard about this quantum consciousness method. Oh, that sounds interesting. I want to go check that out. And all of that is a waste of time because they're ways of distracting the ego, because you typically run to these things because they kind of feed the mind. A lot of these presentations of consciousness and talks about consciousness. This is why we do things differently on this channel. We don't just talk about this stuff. Talk is cheap. We get right to the point. It's experiential. We show you how to do it, and we just go right for it. So, point being is, you got to watch that sneaky ego. It's going to get you distracted. It's going to send you off in more complicated, obtuse directions, looking for freedom, where the most direct, straight path is right there, right for yours to take, if you would just take it. And that brings us to the third drawback of using this kinesthetic method, is that it is often confused for the real method. And what I mean by that is, I often have to work with lots of students when they're practicing using the 6 steps, right, using Lester's method, to not do it kinesthetically. In fact, some of you watching right now, you're like, wait, you mean you're not supposed to open up and move energy when you're using the 6 steps? No, it's releasing in a completely different way. And bringing up energy, identifying the contraction, even though you may feel it while you're using the 6 steps, if you try to release that way, you're slowing the method way down. And this is another important thing that my teacher, Larry Crane, used to point out and work with us very diligently on, is not using the kinesthetic way of releasing when we're using Lester's 6 steps, right? They're 2 totally separate things. And I'm not going to get into the 6 steps here. We're focusing on this kinesthetic because, like I said, it has some good purposes. But I just want you to be aware of the limitations. And one of the limitations is using this as a substitute. And here's the reality behind it. A lot of us, we're quite lazy. Now, I'll be the first to admit my own laziness and holding back and using the method. But as Lester put it, when he talked about what it takes to go all the way, he said that it was his determination and his concentration that took him all the way. And what that means is, if you really want to get the results that Lester got, you have to approach this like an athlete. Like, you're going to go all out. You're going to train and do whatever it takes and get there. And you're not going to let anything stop you. So it's about taking accountability and really stepping up and doing it. Now, a lot of times I run into graduates, releasers that I hadn't seen in years. And I used to go to retreats with them, and I see them and, hey, how's your releasing going? Are you still using the method? And they say, yeah, I'm releasing all the time. I'm releasing every day. And I could tell that they're not. And what they're really saying and what they really mean, because to them, they might legitimately think they're releasing all the time. But to them, what releasing is just letting a little bit of that energy go. And they might identify, like, somebody says something nasty and they feel, affected by it, and okay, I release it a little bit, I feel a little bit better. And they call that releasing. But they're only releasing like only 1% of what they could be releasing. They're just water skiing, most of them, right over their feelings, not even realizing it. And we often get confused and saying, yeah, I'm releasing, I'm using the method, when we're really not. So these are the pitfalls of gravitating and just using this kinesthetic method of releasing or any other variation of releasing other than the 6 steps. And by the way, if you are new to the method or if you haven't taken the deep dive yet, I'll put a link below to the 21-day Mastering Your Fate home study course, which goes through all the ways that you could release and use them in very specific, useful situations. But most importantly, it thoroughly goes through Lester's method, the 6 steps, and just takes you by the hand and shows you how to do it and do it correctly so that you can experience exactly where Lester's coming from and be able to go all the way yourself. So all those tools are right there in that course, and you can check out the link below and take those big steps towards freedom yourself. So to recap and put it all into perspective, I kind of compare it to this little thing right here. This is a Garmin watch. It's a fitness tracker. And all these fitness trackers, whether they're watches or rings or whatever, they advertise a healthy lifestyle. They sell you on the idea that if you wire this watch all day long, it'll track all of your steps. And if you do at least 10,000 steps a day, that's exercise. Now, unless you live a completely sedentary lifestyle, you're a total couch potato, right? If that's the case, then walking 10,000 steps is exercise. But in reality, if you wanted to train as an athlete and you wanted to go the distance, you wanted to be able to run a marathon, walking 10,000 steps a day isn't going to be adequate in getting you to where you can run a marathon. You got to train harder than that. That's why I mentioned earlier that the approach to using the method is like that of being a professional athlete. You got to keep yourself accountable. You got to stay focused. You got to stay committed. You got to train every single day. That's why it's in the 6 steps. Make releasing constant. Don't just skim the surface and let go of 1% a day. Focus. Go as hard as you can. And then the next day, go harder than last time. Dig, dig, dig until you get all the goodness that this method brings you. That's why Lester said it was the concentration and the focus that took me all the way. So, getting back to the kinesthetic method, even though now it sounds like I'm dissing on it and completely invalidating it, it has its purpose. That's why my teacher Larry said, this is not the method. It should not be treated as the method, but it has its place. It has some good stuff about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't teach it to you. And that's why I also demonstrate this, on this channel, because it's just an easy way for us all to experience. We can let go and kind of get back into the groove. But it's up to each and every one of us to take that torch and really run with it ourselves, right? I can't do it for you. Larry, Hale, Lester, any other releasing teacher can't do it for you. It's something that you got to learn how to do yourself and do it yourself. But this is a good way to, get back in and remind ourselves that these feelings are unnecessary. We don't need them. We're much better off without them. And it's simple and easy just to let go. All right, so I'm going to show you how to just let go kinesthetically so you can prove it to yourself and know that you can actually release. All right, so how do you do it? How do you take this first step in letting go of a feeling that's been bothering you? Let's just pick a feeling that bothers you, like frustration. That's a good one. So you ever get frustrated in your life? Think about somebody or something that frustrates you in your life right now. All right, you got something in mind or a particular person? Now here's the thing. From the neck up, all that mind is just a recording and playback machine. That's all that the mind does. It just records things and it plays them back to you. That's all. And it'll just repeat all that it plays back to you, all that negativity. Because if you really pay attention to the mind, 99% of what it tells you is negative, right? There seems to be some positive stuff that the mind talks about, but a lot of it is worry, concern, judgments, dissatisfaction, right? Disapproval, all that stuff. All that stuff just continually comes up in the mind. Worried about this, what about that? Oh, watch out for that. Oh, I'm no good at this, and I'm lousy, and I'm embarrassed, and on and on and on. Right? Just feed you a bunch of negativity. But all it's doing is just playing back the same sounds over and over and over again. It's just a recording and playback machine. So, for example, when you go through your day, you might run into someone nasty out there in the world, and someone might say something rude to you. And what does your mind do all the rest of the day? It just talks about it. Oh, you know what that person said. I wish I should have avoided them and not even gone there. Or, now I got the snappy comeback. I wish I would have said that to them. And it just talks about it on and on and on, all throughout the rest of the day. Even when you are trying to go to bed at night, it still won't shut up. So that's all it does. It just records things And then it plays them back to you, whether you want to listen to them or not. But from the neck up, it doesn't erase any of that noise. Right? And all that mind is just a noise-making machine that distracts you from who you really are. Right? It's just like the blinder. It's like the Wizard of Oz. Right? It has the projection, the illusion that has some sort of control and power. Right? But it's some little guy that's behind the curtain that does not want you to see who's really running the show. It doesn't want you to see what the real truth is. So it binds you with that noise. Now, in order to remove the noise, see, from the neck up, like I said, it doesn't erase any of that noise. But where you can erase it, and where you can erase these feelings, like the frustration, is from the neck down. And this is where we're going to focus on our stomach, our chest area. All right? So think about that person or situation again that frustrates you in your life right now. All right? Thinking about them? Now, as you're thinking about them, using your mind, I want you to shift your focus and pay attention to what you're feeling in your stomach or chest area. And if it helps you, you can close your eyes and actually put your head down towards your stomach, towards your chest there. So you can just really bring your attention there. And notice what you're feeling when you're thinking about that frustrating situation. And you might notice kind of a tight, clenching feeling in there. It's what we call a contraction. And what that is your body letting you know that you're pushing your feelings down. And it's not natural. That's why it feels kind of tight and uncomfortable. Because that frustration that you're feeling is something that you pushed down already in the past. That frustration didn't just show up out of nowhere. You created it. You pushed that feeling down and you've been holding on to it. And it loves to resonate with problems and situations out there. So that jerk that comes along, it triggers that frustration that's already inside of you. And it doesn't belong there. It wants to leave. And so when that trigger happens, that frustration kind of comes up, and it's coming up in a way where, hey, I want out of here. But then you feel it, you're like, I don't like that. And you feel that contraction and you're like, this is uncomfortable. Let's push it down even more. Right? I don't want this frustration. Get it out of here. And so you get into a wrestling match and you just push it down and it just collects and you accumulate more and more frustration over time. So we're going to reverse that. But you notice you got that clenching, tight feeling when you think about that frustrating situation, right? So what I want you to do is wherever you feel that contraction now, open up an imaginary window or door right in front of that. Right in front of that feeling, wherever it is that you feel it. Just open up an imaginary door and imagine that energy now going right on out that door. And you could just do this visually. You could just imagine it as like water flowing out that door. Or smoke billowing out. Or whatever works for you. There's no wrong way to do this. But just imagine that energy that's in that contraction. Just open up a door and imagine that energy going out that door now. And let a little bit more of that energy go. Just out that door. And you don't need to know where it ends up, where it's going, what happens to it. Just let it go out the door. That's all. And a little bit more. And let it go a little bit more. And some more. And even more. And let it go even more. And even more. And it's just energy. There's no need to place any value on it. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just energy passing through. Right, just let that energy pass through even more now. All right? Now notice how you feel. And here's the thing. Just see if you feel a little bit lighter. That's all we're looking for. Sometimes we're expecting fireworks to go off and a big marching band to come crashing through the room, right? Some big revelation or experience, right? But all we're looking for is just a lighter feeling. Just notice if you're feeling a little bit lighter. Notice the difference? And that's it. If you notice you're feeling a little bit lighter, then that's showing you that you're moving the right way. You're going in the right direction. Instead of suppressing, you're releasing. Now, think about that frustrating situation again. And see if you're as frustrated now as you were a few moments ago before you opened up that door and let the energy go. Notice the difference? Notice if you're not as bothered by it. It's not as troubling, not as problematic. Maybe you even have more of a sense of, oh, I can deal with that. No big deal. Just notice. And that's it. Now, if you still have a contraction, right, again, think about that frustrating person or situation. And see if there's a contraction there. Now, you might think, well, wait a minute. I opened up and I let it go. But now the contraction is back. And now that I think about it again, I can kind of bring more up. Wait, I thought I let it go. Well, these feelings are like pulling tissues out of a tissue box. I don't have one handy here, but I would demonstrate it. See, when you pull one tissue out, what happens? The next tissue pops up. You pull that one out, the next tissue pops up. If you keep pulling the tissues out, eventually the box will be empty. All right? So don't worry if you feel more there. See, you're kind of letting some stuff go at the surface, and it's allowing something a little bit deeper now to come up. You can let that one go. All right, so if you feel a contraction now, go ahead and close your eyes. Put your head down towards your stomach, your chest. Open up that imaginary door. And just imagine that energy going right on out that door now. And more. And even more. And even more. And notice how you feel. Again, just notice if you feel lighter. And that's it. It's a very simple demonstration of releasing. But like I said, if you had to empty out a huge box of tissues that it's like a whole warehouse full, one tissue at a time, it'll take you a long time. If you want to go deeper than that, then check out the 21-day course and learn how to really master the 6 steps. That's like taking one of those big steam shovels right? And just taking chunks out at a time, right? So now, what if you don't feel a contraction, right? Because that's what a lot of people experience. Now, going back to what I mentioned before, see, before we even learned that it's even possible to release, we spent all of our lives either suppressing, escaping, or expressing our feelings. And we've gotten very good at it. We've become experts at suppressing and running away from ourselves. We're really good at it. So much so that we can even numb ourselves out. Like, I don't have any feeling there. There's nothing there. It's like a wall that I can't crack. But that's no limitation. You can still release. I'll just show you another way to do it. So, even though you might not feel a contraction, you still know that you get frustrated, right? You can recognize that. So we're going to approach this a different way. Think about something that frustrates you. And what I want you to do is just rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 on your level of frustration. 10 being the most frustrated, 0 being the least frustrated. Just see where you're at. And you don't need to be totally accurate, just your best idea. Okay, I'm at an 8. Or I'm at on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at a 37, right? Just see where you're at. And notice this, whatever that number is. Just notice that when that frustration comes up, you don't like the frustration, right? And basically, whenever that frustration comes up, for lack of better words, you say no to it. Like, no frustration, I don't want you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Right? See if you've been saying no to that frustration. Now, when you say no to that frustration, does that make the frustration go away? Of course not. In fact, saying no to it tends to make it stronger, right? So, if you've been saying no to that frustration, and saying no to it doesn't do anything for you, would you be willing to do something different? Yes or no? Well, I'm assuming the answer is yes. So, let's do something completely different than what we normally do when we say no to frustration. So, look at that frustration now. And you put a number to it, right? So whatever that number is, an 8, a 3, 37, whatever it is, just look at that frustration, but this time, just say yes to it. And that's it. It's not complicated, just YES. Just say yes to the frustration, that's all. Could you say yes to the frustration? And could you say yes to the frustration a little bit more? And could you say yes to the frustration a little bit more? And could you say yes to it a little bit more? And could you say yes to that frustration even more? And could you say yes to it even more? And could you say yes to it even more? And even more. And even more. And could you say yes to it even more? And now, let's kick it up a notch. I want you to look at that frustration now and say to it, frustration, I love you. I know it might sound silly, but try it. Frustration, I love you. I really love you. I love you if you leave, and I love you if you stay. I love you, frustration, unconditionally. I just love you. I really, really love you. All right? Now measure yourself again and see if that number dropped. Even if by little, maybe you went from an 8 to a 6. Or maybe you went from an 8 to a 1. Right? Just notice that number changed, if it dropped. There, right there, you can see a difference. Even though you didn't actually feel a contraction or move energy, you could see you went from here to here. Now, if you went from, let's say, an 8 to a 3, right? So you let go of some, right? And now you got some momentum. Now, instead of pushing down on the rest of the frustration, just let the rest of it come up now. Just allow that frustration to arise. And just let the rest of it go. You already got the juices flowing, right? So just use this momentum. Welcome up some more frustration. Just let it leave. I love you, frustration. I give you permission to leave. And I give you permission to stay either way. I'm happy with you either way. But just let go pushing down the rest of it. Just let the rest of it leave. And a little bit more. And a little bit more. And a little bit more. And now you might feel like some more movement, even though you couldn't really feel anything before. See, this is like kind of a little way to trick it. But you notice a difference. You rated yourself on a scale of 0 to 10. You saw what that number was, and you recognized that habitually you've been saying no to it by default. Right? You don't like it. Frustration. And you started to discriminate. Well, if I say no to it, does that make it go away? Of course not. Well, let's try something different if that doesn't work. And you just said yes to it. And even though you might not have felt anything in that moment, you recognize, oh, well, I was at an 8, but now I'm at a 3. I can recognize that difference. And there you are. You're releasing. And this last little bit of, okay, now that you got some momentum going, let go pushing down the rest of it, let it go. That's a little way to kind of trick yourself into spontaneously now, kinesthetically bringing up some. And you might realize, oh, there it is. See, when you start playing with it, like I said, we've been experts previously, really good at suppressing and pretending that the feelings aren't there and numbing them out. But once you start kind of putting some cracks in there, then you're like, oh, there's that feeling. But like I said, this is the simplest and most, dare I say, superficial way of releasing, this kinesthetic method. When you get into some of the deeper ones, like in the 21-day course, they show you more direct, faster ways, instantaneous ways, and deeper ways, where you're just letting go of huge chunks. You're pulling them out, all these feelings and negative thoughts by the roots, where they disappear forever. And so that's something that anybody can do. We've taught the method, the direct Lester's method to 3-year-olds, and we've taught it to 83-year-olds. Anybody can do it. It just takes practice. It takes commitment. It takes a willingness to do it. But when you step up, there's no way that you could fail at doing it. No way whatsoever. You can do it. So if you have any questions based on what we've gone through, and if anything's still not working for you, leave a question below. I'll be in here to answer whatever I can, and maybe even do some follow-up videos, right? If you need any extra help, in getting started and taking your own path to freedom now. That's what it's all about. So as always, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate this opportunity to share this wonderful method with you, and I wish you all the freedom and happiness. I'll see you soon.